Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 139. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. He hit rock bottom, was diagnosed with cancer, was homeless, jobless, friendless, had no network, lost his mom, and he realized his setback was a setup for him becoming an award-winning real estate agent, investor, speaker, podcaster, a relationship builder, and CEO. Welcome, Casanova Brooks.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited. I'm definitely excited for this episode and be able to share any value that I can with the listeners.
You have a very profound background. Why don't you fill in the gaps for our audience and share with us what you'd like us to know about you and your business?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and thank you for the introduction. I guess to really understand who I am, I'm originally from the South Side, inner city Chicago. I was raised by a single mom. Dad was never in my life, and my grandma kind of stepped in to be my dad and to help lead the way. So for me, I was always a big dreamer. I remember when I was young, people would always tell me that I could be anything that I wanted to be. And that's great because it's encouraging words to a child. But at the same time, from where I grew up, all I saw was drugs, gangs, violence. So I didn't really know how to become whatever it is I wanted to be. Plus, I didn't see a lot of people who were doing something that I would, really want to gravitate towards or aspire to be. So I felt lost a lot of the times. And I was also the only child. So with no brothers or sisters and no dad around, nobody was saying like, hey, here's the good life. And so I always use my imagination. I would use what I saw on TV. I would use all types of things to just know that my situation at that time was never going to be my final destination. I knew that as long as I just built relationships, and this is something that, of course, there was times in my life where I didn't know what I was really doing, but I was just really developing people skills. I was learning to be nice. I was learning to hold doors open. I was learning to say, please, thank you. All these other things, which would then correlate to just me having opportunities in life. So basically, when I was about 12 or 13 years old, my cousin had just gotten a job in Sioux City, Iowa. So at this time, my family still living in Chicago. Word gets back around to my grandma that this is a way better opportunity. So my grandma decides that she's going to go see Sioux City, Iowa and see if it's better for me. And so less than 2 weeks later, we're on a Greyhound going to check it out. And then we come back after the weekend was over. And less than 2 months later, I noticed that all of our stuff is being packed in a U-Haul. And we're moving to Sioux City, Iowa for whoever knows how long. So that was a huge culture change for me, of course. But again, it kind of contributed to me and my mindset. And that mindset was just because you didn't necessarily look like me didn't mean that you had to be against me. You couldn't be with me. So it gave me, another opportunity to just keep building relationships. And from there, I wound up finishing off middle school, high school. During that time in high school, I did get diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it was all throughout my body. I went through 2 years of chemotherapy, many tests and things like that. But I feel like that made me a lot stronger as well. And then once I finished out, I wound up going to the University of Iowa for 3 years. And that was kind of where my journey in adulthood came. And so I don't know if that gives you a little bit of the background story. I don't know if you want me to keep going from here or if there's a specific question that you want to ask.
Talk about your major. What did you major in college?
Yeah, so that was a funny thing. I graduated high school at 17 years old. And so for me, I was first generation of going to a 4-year university. And I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, because if you think about it, whoever's listening right now, you have younger brothers and sisters, maybe it's you or you have children. And what's the most daunting question that you're asked in your senior year of high school? It's what's next for you, right? What are you going to do now with your life? And so for me at 17, I was like, I didn't really know, but I knew obviously a lot of my friends were going to colleges, and I knew my parents would have been proud. So I decided to apply to just two different schools. And one was LSU, and of course I was in Iowa. But the reason why LSU is because I went on a tour with one of my cousins. She was looking at going to Xavier or Tulane. So we went down there to Louisiana. It was the first time I got to experience like the French Quarter and that. Well, anyway, at the same time, Drumline and Stomp the Yard were out, right? And it was really showcasing urban, and the culture of being in the South. And I absolutely loved that feeling when I went down there. And so my thought was I was going to get back around my people. I always had a goal that I wanted to be a Kappa, all these things. So then I knew when it came time to apply at college, I knew that my mom and grandma would never be able to send for me down in Louisiana. They just didn't have the money like that. So I also applied to the University of Iowa, which was where my primary physician was when I was going through my chemo treatments. So I wound up going to the University of Iowa. Now, to answer your question more directly, I started out in my major. I was big into computers at the time. And so, of course, this was back in the days of AOL and the chat rooms and everything. So I love computer. I started out at computer science. Then I switched my major to just business. Then I switched it because at this time, I'm like, I don't know if these are really what I want to do. So then I talked to my academic advisor, and she tells me about she had an old friend who was doing pharmaceutical sales. So I wound up getting into pharmacy, and that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And then so last but not least, I switched it to communications because my mindset was I just need to get the piece of paper so then I could graduate and I'd be done with it. Well, even that was all within really, 2 years, because 2 months into my junior year, my grades were fine and everything, but I really took a notion of music. But more importantly than that, I really came of the belief that just because you had a degree did not mean you were going to be successful in life. And so I wound up calling my mom and grandma, and I said, hey, I don't think this is what I want to do anymore. And they were, the happiest about it, first off, because, again, I'm first generation for this. I'm already halfway done, and they're so proud. But I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. And then they're like, okay, well, first off, you could have told us this 2 months ago. But, of course, as my mom and grandma has always done, they supported me. And I wound up coming back home, and then I wound up trying to figure out my way of just getting a job and then eventually leading to entrepreneurship.
And talk to us about that journey.
Yeah, so great question. I would say I was always an entrepreneur. I remember when I was like 7 or 8 years old, the first ever job that I really had was I would stand outside of the gas station. This was when I was in Chicago, and I would just try to pump people's gas. So if you came out, Dr. Francis, and I would just be kind of standing right there, and I would ask if I could pump your gas. And if you said yeah, I would hope, not demand or request, but hope for a tip. And I mean, it always just kind of worked out because I was doing the right things, and people were like, oh, he's out there hustling. So that was probably where the start of my entrepreneurship journey came from. Now, when we fast forward to how I really started making money, I would say once I first came back home, I tried some of everything because music played a huge part in this for me of why I left college. I was pursuing music very hard. So then me and a buddy of mine, we wound up getting T-shirts made. We wound up getting hats made. And when we came back, this was in the world now. A lot of people, if you're familiar with e-commerce and online, a lot of people know drop shipping. But this was back in I would say like 2008, 2009. So 10 years ago, I wound up finding a supplier who was over in India before I even knew what drop shipping was. And I found somebody who could make these T-shirts really cheap and do also like the printing and everything on it. So we wound up buying about $500 worth of like shirts and hats. And then we got them shipped over here to the U.S., and I wound up selling them out of like the trunk of my car and my buddy and I. And so once that was pretty much done, I had to go get a real job because it just wasn't bringing in enough to pay the bills. So I wound up getting a job as a server. And this was the first time that I understood really, really the power of building relationships. So what do I mean by that? I would have people early on, it didn't take but 2 to 3 months where I started to get a lot of regulars. And this was a mid-tier, like higher level restaurant where the bills were consistently $150 to $200 just on a consistent basis. So you would come into it on a Thursday night and I would say, hey, Dr. Francis, and you would say, hey, and I say, are you waiting for a table? And you say, yeah, actually, Casanova, we're waiting on that table in your section. It looks like those people are about to get up. So after a while, after that started to continuously happen to me, it dawned on me one day that, like, wow, she could have went anywhere in the city, with her family and friends, but she chose to not only come to this restaurant this night, but also wait for a table in a world where we're living in instant gratification, because she knew that I was going to serve her, I was going to take care of her, and she wasn't going to be hassled. And so from there, I was like, oh, okay, like this relationship thing is good. And I always had a good time. And so then from there, I wound up being able to, I wound up getting recruited to go sell cars. And this was by one of the regulars that I had. He had a big dealership here in the city that I was living in at the time. And he said, I went in to buy a car from a buddy. And he said, hey, is that Casanova out there? And he said, yeah. He says, ask him if he has any interest in selling cars. And I said, when he brought it back to me and he was like, hey, the guy's name was Justin, the GM. And he said, Justin wants to know if you have any interest in selling cars. Now, mind you, my mom and grandma never owned a car. They never owned a house or business or anything. So I was like, so in my mind, I had it as like used sleazy car salesman. And I was like, nah, that's not what I want to be associated with. So I said no. But as all sales managers are, he was very persistent about it. So he wound up recruiting me to come sell cars. And within 6 months, I got car salesman of the month, 2 months in a row. I wound up doing over 25 cars. I just came off my first 10K month. Well, at this time, I had a huge turn in my life. And the reason why I say that is because I also got recruited on the side to do network marketing. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, it was a company which a lot of people are familiar with, but it's called Amway. Are you familiar with it?
Absolutely. Headquartered out of Michigan.
I think they are, but they have the Amway Center down in Orlando, right?
Okay.
Yep. So I got recruited to do Amway. And what I quickly found was that Amway necessarily, its products and services at that time in my life weren't for me. But the values and the self-development that I learned was. So that was the first time that I was ever exposed to like Richest Man in Babylon, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Go for No, all of these things that I was like, wow, like it's a whole nother world out here. And then so I wound up leaving Amway, but all those things stuck with me. One in particular, which was from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it taught me that at the time, even though I was selling cars, I was trading my time for money. Right? I couldn't sell a car if I was not at the dealership. So I started to look at other opportunities of like, what could I do that I could really be paid my worth? But at the same time, if anybody out there has ever listened or read Cash Flow Quadrant, how could I go from the E to the I? And so for me, what that meant was I had to figure out a way to be able to make money on my money. And the best thing that I found was I wanted to own real estate because then I could create cash flow, get appreciation, and get the long-term residual. And so that was kind of where it all kind of stemmed and took its turns for me.
Now, what year is this that you're getting into real estate?
So this was 5 years ago. So 6 years ago, I wound up coming across a video. At this time, I left the car business after, really getting my mind right. And I wound up moving here to Omaha. I had a job opportunity that was going to allow me to do inside sales, but it wasn't the long hours. I was going to have the time back with my family and everything, but then I could still build my other business on the side. So this was back in 2014 when this all happened. So 5 years ago. Now, I did that for 1 year, inside sales. I was a digital marketing expert, and I allowed that to really catapult me to the next level because I finished number 8 in the entire company within just 9 months. So I made the most money that center had ever made, and I was brand new. So I was doing a lot of things when it came to leadership and developing the rest of the team. But I also understood that in the corporate world, everybody could tell you no, but it seemed like nobody could tell you yes. So they had me leading all these programs, and I'm like, well, you know what? I want to try my hand at management. I want to try my hand at all these other things. And they're like, Casanova, we love what you're doing right now, but those opportunities aren't available right now, but keep hustling. And I'm like, I see where this is going. So then I wound up watching some YouTube videos. And are you familiar with a guy named Jay Morrison?
No,
So he's huge right now. I mean, he's on the East Coast. He's down in Atlanta. He was a 3-time convicted felon out of New Jersey, and I wound up coming across his videos. He was nicknamed or acclaimed the celebrity realtor. So he was working with a lot of high-profile and affluent athletes and entertainers over on the East Coast. Well, anyway, I watched one of his videos, and he had said something about be the Lord of your land. right? Because Black people, us, we don't own a lot. So, because he said he or she who owns the land makes the rules. So right then that like hit me, and I was like, wow, I completely agree. But I didn't know anything about how I can own real estate because nobody owned around me. So I looked at what his lifestyle and his trajectory was. He got his real estate license. Then he wound up moving it along. He used his commissions to then buy his own properties. And then that's how he was creating cash flow. And so that's the exact scenario that I did. I wound up getting my real estate license since I knew nothing about real estate. But I figured I would build relationships with other people, both inside and outside of the business. I would use that to build my business, take those commissions, and then buy my own real estate. And that's been the trajectory that I've stayed on.
Tell us what you are most grateful for right now in your life, Casanova.
I'm most grateful for, one, the mindset that I've been gifted with, and two, my family. So let me explain those, and those are in no particular order. But the reason why I say that is because a lot of the times when we think that when it rains, it pours, and that's the truth. But I always say you got to be able to weather the storm. Because nowadays, the information is all out there. But understand that, yes, one, information can change your situation, but not without you having some implementation. So what that comes with is you got to understand, and this is something that I learned early on from the great Jim Rohn, is, what's really wrong with a lot of people's scenarios is not that somebody else is against them, not that they don't have enough opportunities, but it's because their philosophy is broken. So when I looked at this, and even at the time, after I got my license, right? So this was 4.5 years ago after I got my license. I had my license for about 4 months. Well, my mom calls me up and she says, hey, your grandma and I want to move down to Omaha with you and Julie, who's my wife, and my son, CJ. And she said, we want to move down there. There's nothing else here for you. And I say, okay. So within a couple weeks, we moved my mom and grandma down here. Well, within 24 hours, my mom winds up going to the hospital here in Omaha. Within a week and a half stretch, I lose my mom at that exact hospital. Now, what was also more tragic for me at this time was I was in a situation of transitioning jobs from inside sales to outside sales. So then I could build more relationships to gear up my real estate business. But two, we were in the process of buying our first home, my wife and I. So because of losing my mom, it became a domino effect where I lose my job and my home in conjunction with losing my mom all within the same week. And keep in mind that I'm in a brand new city where I have no friends, no family, no church group. So I'm like, oh my God, well, what am I going to do? Well, it was easy for me to just put my head down and feel like, woe is me. But I understood that I had to get out here. I still had 3 other people, as in my wife, my son, and my grandma, who were dependent on me. So I decided to get out. I decided to build relationships. And within 9 months from losing my mom, I did 46 deals, $8 million in volume in real estate. And I got the Rookie of the Year here in the state of Nebraska, which was significant because for having your real estate license in the first year, the average agent does 1, maybe 2 deals. Even no matter how long you've been in the business, the average agent does 5 to 6 deals. So for me to come out my first year and do 46 in a state where not very many people look like me and nobody else that does look like me is selling real estate, it was a challenge, but I used it as an opportunity to really see how great I could be. And it all started with my mindset that I was going to affect change. And then the second thing was my family. And so I've been with my wife now for 17 years. So we're high school sweethearts. I always make the joke that I've been with her longer than I've not been with her. So we've been through, the most trying times, one of which I just told you about. When we lost everything, as in my mom, my job, and my home, we had to go stay with her second aunt, who we didn't talk to very much, but she was going through a divorce situation with her husband. And she said, hey, you guys can come stay in here in my basement, and you can pay me a little bit of rent just so you can get on your feet. So she only had 1 bedroom in her basement, which we wound up giving to my son. And my wife and I, we put our bed in the storage utility room. So while I'm helping people buy $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 homes, they don't know that I'm going back to sleep in a utility room next to a furnace and a water heater. But again, it was my mindset, and my wife stuck with me that whole time because there was very many times where I wanted to give up. But 1, I knew what my why was, and 2, I had the support of her saying, hey, you're not just going to give up, because then you're going to always wonder what if. Something's got to give. Either it has to work or it has to work. So that was the mindset that I had, and it started with my family.
Casanova, what was that aha moment that you knew that your business was going to be successful?
I would say the moment that my back was against the wall and I said, again, it had to work or it had to work. So when I went out there, I was very scared. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm helping people with their most, prized and expensive investment, whether they're buying or selling. But I just knew that no one was going to outwork me. And so early on, when I was being interviewed on why should we do business with you, Casanova, I was just putting my best foot forward. People knew up front that, I wasn't the most seasoned realtor, but at the same time, I would let people know that, listen, while I don't have the 5 to 10 to 20 years of experience, I can tell you this one thing: no one's going to outwork me. And I would look them in their eyes and they could feel the hunger, they could feel the passion. Maybe because I knew that I had to go back home to a furnace room. So if I didn't make it work, like, I was never going to get out of my situation. And so after the first couple of times of me doing this and people giving me a shot, right? I always say, if you listen to me long enough, I say when hard work meets opportunity, it looks a lot like luck. And so I was already working hard, but I needed someone to give me an opportunity. And when they started doing it, from the outside looking in, it looked like I was getting very lucky. And I did feel lucky that people didn't go with another agent at that time. But I also knew that I was putting my best foot forward and I was out there doing everything that I needed to do so I could get my family out of this situation. So after the first 2 or 3 times, I started to see that, like, listen, if you just keep showing up every day, eventually, if they don't let you in the front door, you go around the back door. And if they don't let you in the back door, you try to go through the side door. And if they don't let you in the side door, you create your own door, because eventually somebody's going to want to partner with you and somebody's going to love your energy as long as you bring positivity every single day.
So talk about the process of creating your own company.
Yeah, so everything that I've always done, my biggest thing was making sure that I had some type of ownership, right? Like, in the world that we live in today, especially us as Black entrepreneurs or just us as Black citizens in this country, we have a lot of systemic problems. We have a lot of things that are not working in our favor. But at the end of the day, all of the what's the words that I want to use, all of the concerns or problems that you want to voice, at the end of the day, they don't mean anything if you don't have one or two things. The one is the wealth or the money. If you don't bring any money to the table because you don't have ownership, or 2, if you don't have the status or the influence. So for me, I understood that for me, if I really wanted to affect change, I needed to either 1, have influence, because the 2 peoples that affect change, I kind of already alluded to it, but 1, it's the people who write the laws into existence in this country, or 2, it's the people who have the money that influence the people who write the laws into existence. There's no two ways of it. There's no other way. So you're either going to be one of those 2 people. But the easier way for you to do it is to figure out how, whatever you're doing, you can have some type of ownership in it. And so that was what I always wanted. I always wanted to control my own destiny. I always wanted to control my own time. And I wanted to be able to create generational wealth. There's a saying that I read about 6 months ago, and it also hit me in the heart. And it said, if I didn't come from a wealthy family had to come from me. Well, if I look at it, at the end of the day, there's no way I can pass down a job to my son, right? If there's no way that if my son doesn't have any type of ownership, that he can truly affect the change that he wants, because at the end of the day, he's still an employee. So that was where, when I first started to figure out what was I going to do differently than what those who came before me was doing, not to say that I didn't have love and support, because I always did, but I needed to figure out a way that when my time was up, there was something that my son could build off of. And now my daughter, there's something that they could build off of, to have on the back of their shirts, their jersey, that it's a legacy. It's not just a foundation, which is me, but it's a legacy, which is us. And that all starts with ownership.
Who are your top 2 influencers in life, and what lessons did they teach you, Casanova?
Yeah, great question. I would say right now, the 2 people who have influenced me the most, one would be Jay-Z, which is kind of cliche. He's influenced a lot of people, but the reason why he's influenced me is because we've watched this man go from, in my opinion, $50,000 to $100,000 20 years ago to now having a net worth of about $1 billion, or at least a worth of about $1 billion. And what's most significant about that to me is when you look at him, he said it early on. He said, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman, right? And so that was so big to me because I've had my hands in so many different business ventures, and one of which now my wife and I just less than 3 months ago, we opened up a daycare center in the heart of Omaha, and it's 7,500 square feet. But that's my wife's project. I just, was able to support her because she supported me in many things. So I do have a lot of different business ventures that I own that are going on right now. But watching Jay-Z was how I knew that these were all possible, right? When I ask a lot of people, I say, do you know what contributes the most to Jay-Z's net worth? What would you say, Dr. Francis?
Real estate?
Nope.
Music?
Nope.
Business?
Kinda. Well, I mean, not to keep going with it, but if you look on the Forbes list, I read a report, and what contributes the most to his wealth, $330 million, is Ace of Spades champagne. That contributes the most of it. It's shocking for a lot of people because when you think of champagne, you don't think Jay-Z. And when you think of Jay-Z, the first thing that comes to your mind is not champagne. But that contributes the most to his net worth. Right? So it just shows that, again, you don't have to be everything. You just have to have the influence, again, or the money, and then you create, the influence of why somebody would buy this product, and that's where you partner at, and you become a true entrepreneur. And so that's Jay-Z, the first one. And then the second one is Jay Morrison, as I said. And the reason being is because at that time when I was very lost in life and I was trying to figure out who I am, how can I provide a purpose in this world? How can I provide impact, influence in this world? He was the person who I turned to, and he gave me a lot of insight, and I call him a mentor from afar. And what's funny about it is I actually wound up giving him a testimonial video because he was going to fly one couple, one protege out to Atlanta and spend the weekend with him. And I wound up submitting that testimonial video. I didn't wind up winning, but now he put that testimonial video, or it has been for about a year or two, on his front page, where many people have reached out to me through LinkedIn and other media platforms to say they found me on Jay Morrison's page and they support me. And so just the way that he's doing, the way that he's uplifting the Black community, the way that he started the Tulsa real estate crowd fund, and just how he's been so selfless about everything that he's done, I feel like he's definitely still been a mentor. And one day I look forward to being able to meet him in person and tell him what he's been able to do for me and how I've been able to pay it forward.
What is one valuable lesson you wish you knew before starting your business?
The power of really thinking outside of the box. And what do I mean by that? I mean to understand that in the beginning, we all start off, for the most part, as solopreneurs, right? We get out of a job, we get out of corporate America, and we're thinking that, everything's going to be us, us, us. We're really just small business owners. We own a job, right? That's really. But then if you really want to graduate to being an entrepreneur, you got to understand that it's more about the team. It's more about systems, automations, processes, and culture. Right? That's what it's really about, because otherwise you'll never be able to get out of your own way. And you thinking that you have to do everything, you're going to burn yourself out no matter what that business venture is. So that was really, really big for me, because I started out as a solopreneur and now I've graduated to an entrepreneur. And in the end, you want to graduate to being an investorpreneur, where you're just having your money work for you and you have other people that are managing your systems and your processes. And prime example is Jeff Bezos and Amazon. He started out, a lot of people seen that video or that picture that went viral where he was just in his garage. And then, now look at him, how much is he even really involved in the day-to-day Amazon? He's probably not a lot. I seen another video, this was a couple months back, but he was doing a panel. And he said, if you think about it, us as executives, you're really only paid to make one or two high-level decisions a day, right? That's all you're paid for. Like when you're a high-level executive. But for us, we think we got to make every decision. If it's not done our way, that it's not the right way, and you'll just burn yourself out on it. So I wish that I would have had that mentality when I was first going in. But at the same time, you do want to learn a little bit about every part of your business so you can make sure that it's done the right way. You just can't stay there forever, because otherwise you'll never be able to scale and get more of your time back.
What is your biggest achievement so far in your business?
I would say doing the 46 deals, 8 million in volume. When you look at what the average agent does, when you looked at what my surroundings were, when you look at I have no college degree, here in Nebraska, it's not. It's a segregated. At least Omaha is very, and I mean the whole state of Nebraska. There's not a lot of diversity that goes on. That's not saying that we're not trying to build towards a more innovative and inclusive culture. But right now, over the last 20 years, it's a small percentage of people who control the wealth. And so being able to do what I did with my situation, with my circumstances, and I always make the joke that, I'm 2 calls away from anyone in the city, which is real, 3 calls away from Warren Buffett. Now, he would have to take the call, of course, but I have enough connections to him that if I had a real reason of why I wanted to talk to him, I'm pretty sure I could sit down with him. So being able to do all of this in a short amount of time of only living here in Omaha for 5 years, really only focusing on building my business and my influence and my relationships for the last 4, I think that it's pretty amazing what I've been able to accomplish, again, with no mentor, nobody who's taught me anything. I've just been ground level and making sure that I can develop my mindset.
What is your biggest challenge of being an entrepreneur?
I would say it's balance. If you are a true entrepreneur, you're always trying to figure out how you scale, how you solve another problem, how you can create more impact and influence. And you have to, in my opinion, there's not a real way to create balance. You just got to have good communication. And this was something I learned from another mentor. It's like, as you're an entrepreneur, as you're trying to take on this journey of changing the world, saving the world, whatever you want to say, there's going to be a lot of sacrifice that comes with that. And so that means that you're going to be leaving your family sometimes. You're going to be traveling. You're going to be trying to level up. You're going to be doing different mindsets or masterminds, not mindsets. And so with that, I think that you got to find a little bit of balance of how you don't lose your family and what got you started going on this journey in the process. And the only way you can kind of, make sure that you protect yourself and protect your family is making sure that you have communication. So what that means is asking your family or whoever else, like, what is the most important things that we have coming up over these next couple months? Is it my daughter's dance recital? Is it my son's football game? Is it our anniversary? All of these things, because once you start influencing, there's going to be a lot of people that are constantly reaching out to you saying, hey, I loved hearing you on that podcast. Can we set up a time to, hop on a call? Can you help me here? Can you help me there? And you're just continuously wanting to help. When in that time, you could lose sight of, the trees that's right in front of you because you're trying to tackle the forest. And that could lose everything that you've already built. So trying to figure out a way that, again, you create the right systems and processes in the beginning, and how you stay on top of communication is the most important thing and challenge of what we can all have as entrepreneurs.
And Casanova, talk about self-care. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, self-care is really, for me, providing... at the end of the day, there's a great quote that I heard from Warren Buffett. He was sitting on a panel and someone asked Warren, how do you know when you've truly been successful in life? And this is going to be a little bit weird the way I say it, but I think that your people will understand in the end. But Warren Buffett had said, you'll never truly know how successful you've been in life until you die and you see how many people attend your funeral. Now, why that's so big is because a lot of people know Warren Buffett. Some would even consider him an atheist. He doesn't talk about afterlife and all those other things. He's just a straightforward guy. But he's talked about, when you die, you see how many people come to your funeral. But more importantly, you see how many people cry at your funeral, because those are the people that you truly impacted their lives. So for me, when I look at this thing and I say, okay, I understand that while we're here, we all want to have bucket lists. We all want to experience things, get cars, money, all these other things. But that's not the end goal, right? It's really about what do you do with the money? How do you use it as a tool? So for me, it's about the impact that I could really leave on this world. How many people will cry at my funeral? Well, first off, I guess for me to really have that self-care, I really got to feel, one, that I'm doing all for the people who will come behind me, as in my son, my daughter, my grandchildren, that I know that one day they're going to say, my grandpa, my dad, he did everything he could to change the trajectory for us. And that also means not just leaving them assets, but also leaving them videos, creating email accounts for them where I can even once a quarter send them an email and say, here's how proud I am of you. So they don't have to hear it from other people. Because at the end of the day, when I'm laying on my deathbed, hopefully I go out comfort care style and I live to 100 years old. But at the end of the day, all I'm really going to have is the memories that I've created along my lifetime. And so that's what I'll look back on, and that's when I'll be the most fulfilled, because I heard something else and it stuck with me, but it said, failure weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons. So I never want to, at the end of my road, have any regret. So again, my self-care is to make sure that I don't live with a life of regret, and that I truly understand that failure weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons.
And what do you do to stay fit mentally and physically?
For me, I listen to a lot of inspiration, things that doesn't have to be a motivational speaker, but it can allow me to level up my mindset. So it could be Jim Rohn, it could be an audiobook, it could be podcasts. It's me talking to other entrepreneurs and making sure that my iron stays sharpened, because I'm sharpening it with the mindset of other entrepreneurs. All of those things teach me that I can never become comfortable, because there's always something else that I can become better at. So it's not competing with other people, but it's competing with how do I become a better person each day. If I look back on what I accomplished yesterday and I was satisfied, can I do just a little bit more today to where I'm satisfied again tomorrow? And making sure that if my family was to follow me around for one day, what would they say about the lifestyle that I'm living in this day? Would they say, oh man, you're really working at this? Or would they say, like, this is all you do? So for me, it's understanding that every day I can challenge myself, both in health and wealth and in relationships.
Speaking of podcasts, share your podcast and how others could listen to your podcast. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Dream Nation, and it is on all platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify. And basically why I decided to call it Dream Nation is because I believe that everything starts with a dream. Right? When we're young, we all have these dreams. And when we get older, sometimes we wind up putting our dreams to the wayside. But I believe that everything starts with a dream. And those of us who dare to dream while the rest of the world is settling for what society will tell us is reality, we're the ones who stand to be change makers, thought leaders, and make this world a better place, because we're the trailblazers. So that's why I decided to call it Dream Nation. And it's similar to the same concept that you have. I want to make sure that I can empower people to just take action.
If someone wrote a book about you, Casanova, today, what would they learn about you that they don't know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that they would learn that I'm a very, very versatile guy. So what do I mean by that? I think that I don't allow myself to be put in any box. I listen to a lot of hip hop and I'm big on, our culture. But at the same time, like, it'd be crazy if you heard some of my favorite songs, which are country. So when people hear some of those songs, they look at me and be like, what? But it's just because, again, I understand that I can never be mad at my energy, and I can never be mad at the information. It's okay that you don't like certain people, but you can't be mad at the information. And at the end of the day, your energy will be everything to change your situation, again, as long as you have the implementation. So I would say a lot of people, when they see me, they might not understand how versatile that I am. I do a lot of different things, and I just make sure that at the end of the day, that I try everything at least once. Because then that's going to, more importantly, teach me what I don't like. And then it'll also, along the way, help me to understand what I do like.
Talk to a younger you. What advice would you give to a younger Casanova?
I would say that, one of the things that was said to me by a good buddy of mine, he said, what, if you're in your head, you're losing bread. Right. And so the reason why most of us don't have the success that we desire to have in life, it's not because somebody else is even holding us down. It's because that we are in our own way. We're in our own situation. We're in our own head. And so I would say, one of the things to understand, we don't want to bug people. We don't want to feel like that we are bugging anybody or we're trying to oversell. But understand, if you have enough pride in whatever that product or the service is that you're selling, and you're selling it to somebody who's already successful, understand that persistence respects persistence. So somebody, whoever you're trying to sell to, or whoever you're trying to get their time, they understood or they probably understand what it's like to once be in your situation. So for me, a lot of people reach out to me after they hear me on podcasts, and they don't have a problem with reaching out to me because they know that I was there at one point where I was trying to reach out to other people to get my product or my service in their hands and to at least just be able to build a relationship with them. So the key out of all of this is to understand persistence respects persistence.
What is a technology tool or a technology platform that is a must-have for managing your business day to day?
I think one that's still a little undervalued, but that a lot of people should be looking at is Trello. I think Trello allows for a lot of automation, and Trello's been huge for my business and being able to automate and also being able to systematize it.
What's a daily or a weekly habit that you do consistently that has given you the greatest success?
I would say, for the most part, I'm listening to some type of piece. Really, I would say the number one thing is every single day, if you check my Instagram, if you check my LinkedIn, if you find my stories, you'll see that I'm always coming from a place, especially in the morning, of positive vibes. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm always listening 8 hours a day to something that's inspirational or educational, but I find my zone in the morning. For some people, that's meditation. For some people, that's music. For some people, that's a podcast. For some people, that's exercising. Whatever it is, I find my zone in the morning that can make me feel like, you know what, today I'm going to win, I'm going to own, I'm going to seize the day. So find your zone. That's what I've been very fortunate and able to do is every single day I find my zone and find my positive energy.
Now, I don't know if you're going to answer this differently. We can learn from successful entrepreneurs or brands. Tell us a brand or a business that's dominating or you admire and why. And I know you've mentioned Amazon and Jay-Z, and I don't know if they would be the brand or the successful entrepreneur that you would like to share on that particular question.
Yeah, so both of those I would definitely say is great, but I'll also, shameless plug, I'll give the brokerage that I'm with, which is called EXP Realty. So we are the fastest growing real estate company ever in North America. And we are the Amazon of real estate is what real estate experts call us. And so to tell you a little bit about it, when I say the fastest growing, 4 years ago, we had just over 650 agents across the U.S. Now we're in 50 states, 5 Canadian provinces, and this quarter we're also opening up in UK and Australia, and now we're over 22,000 agents. So I would say that that is the fastest growing brand and a brand that I'm proud to be partnered with, and something that I can definitely put my name on because I feel like it definitely has the integrity that amplifies who I am.
Let's talk about risk or failure. What is the worst moment in business and what was your takeaway?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've had lots and lots of failures. I just had a which I don't look at them as failures. I just had this conversation this morning, right? It's always a lesson learned because you're going to learn a lot more from your failures than you ever would your successes. And the one thing that I always say is ask yourself on any risk that you're going to take, is it a calculated risk? Because you have to take risks. Without risk, you'll never get great reward. So it's in startups, it's in the stock market, it's in real estate. It doesn't matter what it is. You have to take some risk. But you just ask yourself, okay, is this a calculated risk on my part? Have I done my due diligence? More importantly, even if I was to fail, is this something that I can bounce back from? 9 times out of 10, the answer is absolutely yes. Now, your pride might be hurt. Your ego might be hurt, but as long as you did it the right way, right, your integrity is still intact, and it was a risk, right? You probably, you conveyed that message up front. You set the right expectations up front, and it was a risk, but you can always bounce back from it. Even if your credit's going to go down the drain, if it was a bankruptcy or something, it can always be rebuilt, restored, or repaired. So you can always bounce back from it. You just got to make sure that it was calculated and that you had integrity along the way, and you will be more successful the second time. If you go into it the second time always saying, oh my God, I'll never do that again, that's the wrong way to approach it. The right way to approach it is to say, you know what, instead of saying I'll never do that again, say, hey, when I do that again, here's what I'm going to do differently. So I always feel like that risk, it's going to come with the territory. I have a lot of risks and a lot of failures. I am a real estate agent Plus, I'm a full-time real estate investor. So I'm flipping houses. I own rental properties, and I'm building relationships. And a lot of the times you have to come from a different approach because people are always very pessimistic, right? So you have to, sometimes it's like, when I go to build this relationship, it's like, maybe is this the best use of my time right now? But I still do it, anyway. And then at the end, it's like, oh man, I knew it. But you can't say that I'm not going to do that again. It's saying, okay, here's what I know. If I know better, this next time around, I got to do better. And if I'm going to do better, here's what I'll do. So that's how I look at all risk and failure. You're always going to fail. Just make sure it's a calculated risk. And if you know better, do better.
What is the one impact you want this interview to give to our audience?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I would say to just take action. The number one thing, right? I think I heard this, and I can't remember who said it, but it was great. But it's, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great, right? You got to take that first step. And a lot of the times it's just like a staircase. When you look all the way at the top of the staircase, you can't jump 17 steps at one time. But if you put your head down and you take it one step at a time, before you know it, you'll get to that staircase. And if you run hard enough with your head down, you'll get up there faster or sooner rather than later. So and my whole goal for anybody that's listening to this is just to understand that, again, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great, and you have to take action. Because those of us who have a dream, it'll only be a fantasy if you never take any action.
Casanova, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question that you would have asked yourself? And I'd like you to answer that question.
So one question that I would have asked myself, what's the way that people should be looking to, change the trajectory of their lives? What's the thing that most people should be looking at to get out of their situation? And so I would say that's a two-part question. The first thing is, if you already have a job that you love, but you're trying to figure out how do you create some additional income, I am a huge fan of arbitraging. So what is arbitraging? It is you figuring out a way to flip things. So if you think about right now, what's your gift, right? And what do I mean by what's your gift? It's what comes easy for you and harder for others. So let's say you understand cell phones very well. Let's say you understand computers very well. Let's say you understand branding very well. But for the point of this statement, I'm going to say cell phones. If you understand cell phones very well, figure out how you can buy cell phones at a discount, whether that be on Facebook swap sites, whether that be on Craigslist, whether that be reaching out to family and friends if they have old phones. You buy it at a discount rate, and then you put them on eBay, you put them on Craigslist, you put them on Facebook, you put them on a website called Swappa, wherever you can go to arbitrage, and you can make a little bit of extra income from that. When I was first working as a digital marketing consultant, I was selling cell phones on the side, and I was making about an additional $500 a week. Average $100 per cell phone. I did 5 of those. I was making an additional $2,000 a month, which was great. But then the second point of this is, okay, now I got a little bit of money. What should I be looking to invest in? And I'm always a big proponent of real estate. Again, it comes back to owning land. And we understand that land was the one thing that they'll never make any more of. That's why back in the day, when we look at our heritage, land was the thing that people were killing over. And so figure out a way that you can own land. If you can't own land, own the property on top of it, the air and the mineral rights. And that's what I would say. And then, figuring out a way how you can start to own real estate, because then you can create cash flow. You can get appreciation from that cash flow. And then also you can have tax benefits and deductions from that real estate as well.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. Are you ready, Casanova, for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Yeah, let's do it.
The last movie you saw?
I feel like it was Black Panther.
You relaxed doing what?
That's a great question. If you ask my wife, she would say I do not relax, but it probably coaching my son in basketball.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Drake. It's a tie between Drake and Jay-Z.
Your favorite dance song?
That's a great question. Favorite dance. Yeah, there's a Sounds of Blackness. I want to say it's called Sounds of Blackness. I can't even remember. Do you know the song I'm talking about?
I know the group Sound of Blackness, but I don't know exactly which song.
They have a song, and it's called Optimistic.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
I try to eat some type of fish. So I would say either salmon. I'd probably say salmon.
What your favorite month?
I'd say the month of September. Football's starting. It's my birthday month. We're just getting out of the super hotness a lot of the time. So the month of September.
Casanova, what is the best way for our audience to connect with you and to support your business?
Yeah, I would say first, the podcast. The podcast is the best way to support and connect with me. I'm on all social media platforms, just Casanova Brooks. So Instagram, LinkedIn. Casanova is Casanova. So only one S in Casanova. But that's probably the best way. Any of those platforms you can connect with me on. I'm pretty accessible.
That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.